Hey, and welcome to episode 2 of our critiques in October. Thank you to everybody who sent in the photos. I really appreciate it, guys. I know how hard it is to sometimes hear someone just rip apart your great work. Also, it's easy for me to sit here and be an armchair critic and tell you to move this way and that way, or put your light in a place where you might not have been able to. Only you know all of the struggles you went through, so I really, really do appreciate it. And I am sorry if I tell you something that is probably impossible to do in that case, okay? So, with that being said, what I'm looking for are the following categories. I'm looking at your composition. Is it effective? When I say effective composition, I am talking about, does the background actually make sense, and is the background used effectively to create an element of harmony between the subject and the background? That is number one. Number two, I'm also looking for light. Is the light used effectively? And if you are using another source of light, is that used effectively? And also, I'm looking for expression and the moment as well. Finally, I'll kind of point out post-production issues if there's any. So let's move on to the first photograph. Okay, I really like this photo for several reasons. First, the composition. It actually falls into the golden triangle rule. If you notice that there is these lines that run through this photo, the wall and the grass, their hands, as well as this particular wall on this side, they all fall within that golden triangle. I don't know if the photographer meant for this to happen. If you did, awesome job. If you didn't, still you got a great eye. So good job doing that. The colors in the photo look pretty good to me. It's slightly muted, but I don't mind it. Looking at the photo, I wish that they had their heads up a little higher so I could see their faces. So tilt their necks or chins up a little bit more when you're shooting from up high. The other thing is, when you have this type of a composition and you're so particular with these lines, make sure that next time, like, this line doesn't cross through his head, and perhaps move him a little bit more so there's a little bit of gap between him and there's a bit of space on this side. So all in all, great job. Just be more intentional with your composition and where you place them in the frame, and make sure that we can see more of their faces than the tops of their heads. Awesome. Moving on. I love close-ups, and I'm really happy that this photographer got close. And I appreciate these expressions. Even though their eyes are closed, it looks like a very quiet moment, and that is believable. The skin tones, because you're so close, I feel like there isn't much light on the skin from my side where I'm looking at. So it's gone a little bit gray. I'd fix that in post. Also, this piece here is distracting, and I would have noticed that. Next time you shoot this, just make sure, like, if you use a veil for interest, that you make sure where you place these lines, you're intentional with that as well. I don't mind all of these. I do mind this one. It is distracting. I went ahead and fixed a couple of those issues, and I felt like this image could get even closer. So I cropped within this ear and this earring, and I also got rid of some of his bits of hair that was distracting me. And now I feel like you are closer and very intimate in this moment with them, and I like that. Great job to the photographer. Okay, in this photo, the sky and the bridge and the water look really beautiful. The only concern is that there's a lot happening in this photo, that the couple get lost in that. And it's unfortunate that they are in the most busiest part of the scene as well. The railings here, as well as this bit of green, all this running water, and this bit of concrete, all of that take away from the magic of this beautiful piece of scenery and this reflection that's happening in the water as well. For me, the couple are lost in so much that's happening that the effectiveness of this photo as a couple photo is lost on me. So if you go back here and you wanted to take this photo again, I'd find a way to avoid all of this below here. One technique you can use is you can use a reflection, like a phone or something, just right over here, and get the couple in this part. So you'll have to come down lower. Wherever you are right now is a little too high. So if you come down a little bit lower, this area will become smaller and the couple will kind of climb up into this because of perspective. And then you can reflect back this little bit, which to me is the most beautiful part of the image. This is also overexposed. The clouds on the sky are overexposed as well, so it doesn't really work even as just a shot like this. And the other thing, the couple are very quiet in their pose for being this small in the frame. I wish that they were doing something a little more rambunctious to bring more attention to them, or covering more of this area here. Okay, the other strategy, whenever you look at a scene like this, that I want you to kind of get into the habit of looking for, is not just as a place, but as just lines and shapes. So this particular photo, as lines and shapes to me, kind of look like this. So in your mind's eye, when you view a place like this, I want you to kind of get into the habit of looking at it like that. So it's not really just a photo, but that's what's happening in it. When you do this simplification, it should be easy for you to notice, okay, I can place the couple in here, I can place the couple in here. Over here, down below, it's a little too much happening, and if I place them in here, it will be very difficult to see. So it becomes easier for you to understand a location than just looking at it like that. So always in your mind's eye, just see patterns of lines and shapes. So next time you can figure out where to place the couple more effectively. All right, moving on. All right, on to the next photo. I like the location that this photo is taken in. It's a fabulous place. The intention here looks like one of those Instagram travel photos. With that being said, the location is great, but the time of day is unfortunately very harsh. So it makes the place look a little more garish than it should. Also, the center composition of the pose look a little forced, especially the hand hold. Plus, his back looks really nice and her back isn't flattering in this particular angle, especially with harsh light hitting her. I would just bring him a little bit closer to her, and I know it will cover a little bit of this, but I would just bring him closer so his hand goes around her like that, so it's a little bit more flattering to her. Now, the other thing that bothers me a lot is, yes, these harsh lights, but more so it's how overbearing the green and the foliage is in the scene. And that is due to a lot of the elements in this photo are in focus. This is one of those times when a shallow depth of field will really help bring attention to the scene and the subject that you want to show off. So here, I've just kind of done it in post. Please don't ever do this in post because it is the ugliest thing ever. I'm just doing this so that you can get an idea of what this will look like for demonstration purposes. So if you used a lens like 1.2 or something like that, where you bring attention to the couple, this would be one of those situations where it would actually heighten this photo. So instead of all the foliage being in focus, you can bring attention to just them by using a shallow depth of field. All right, in this photo, the colors are really popping, and I love the leading lines that are bringing your eyes to them this way, and they look pretty natural and relaxed. Now, the photo is missing the softness that's in the overall mood of them. That's because, again, there are very, very sharp lines going down this way, and it's a lot of gray in the background. So I'm looking at the composition as well as the background and going, does this really match? Again, this is one of those other places where a shallower depth of field would have helped as well. And the hard light on them isn't helping as much to bring in that soft mood. So I've retouched them a little bit softer. And again, please don't do this in post. I emulated a shallow depth look, just to kind of show you that how it might help bring in that softness to this photo. Again, the light on her is not the most flattering. That's because it's being broad lit. I would light her from the shadow side so that you get to see more shape on this side of her face as opposed to the chin and the cheeks being so wide. And that's happening because she's lit like pretty much straight on, and that's not helping with that shadow that's crossing down to her lip as well here. I would definitely light for the girl first, get the light more flattering on her, and then add the groom. And then also with this groom, I would avoid this white salva thing because it's really not helping tell any part of the story. It's actually very distracting as well. So I'd remove that and I'll just say, hey man, like this doesn't look good in the photo. Let's just take it off and then just do this photo. You're in control of all of this, so you can do that. So those are some of the things that I would change in this photo to make it better. Hope that helps. All right, I like how dramatic this photo feels, and this flare here is really cool. The time of day is actually perfect to do this kind of a shot. Now, the only problem is that there is no story here. There's just two people looking at each other and a man holding a lightsaber. Why, right? Anytime you use a prop, you have to tell me a story. Otherwise, the prop kind of feels cheesy. And in this photo, if I'm going to be an asshole about it, it looks like he's like looking at her mad and he's about to just take a swing at her with the lightsaber. That's not the story you really want to tell. And the flare and all of that is just there. It's not really adding anything to the story. Next time, think about and imagine a story, right? Are they Jedi? Okay, fine. If they are Jedi, what are they doing? Are they fighting off an invisible foe? Maybe they're just there, them against the world. If it's them against the world, maybe they're not looking at each other, they're looking out of each other. So maybe they're shoulder to shoulder facing out, and he's got his lightsaber in one hand and her in the other arm, right? So tell me that story. Imagine what that's going to look like and use that to present the elements in the photo in that way so that they're all matching. Another cool way to do it is if you really have to include the backlight and the light coming from it in this photo, you could have his arm reaching out to that light and him holding the lightsaber in the other, so it looks like he's just deflecting something or he's just using his Jedi powers and she's behind him like a damsel in distress. So there's so many other options here that you could do other than just placing two people just standing next to each other. Okay, moving on. Beautiful location. Good job finding these repeating lines here. I think they're lanterns. Yeah. And the yellow is so like it's just popping right out of this frame. It looks so vivid. And the only problems I have with this is all of this is really not adding anything. These people in the background are just not doing anything for me. And this highlight here is really pointless. I would crop in a little bit more. And their pose is a bit too casual for me, so it feels like more of a snapshot. If I did this shot, I would crop in about here and raise my camera a little bit more so I lose this bit here, this here, and I would use this leading angle to place them here and here, or even just here, him perhaps whispering into her something, and then she can have her chin up and smiling or laughing out loud and her eyes gazing away from me or something like that. That would work. And I would also lose these power lines as well. There's just too many distractions to really enjoy what's really beautiful about this photo, which is these leading yellow things and their shadows at the bottom here. So great location. Next time you're here, I would look to eliminate distractions and really focus on what's beautiful in the scene. Okay, I love the mood here. I love the use of the warm gel in the backlight, not just a cold light. It's not the same as other photos where they're just looking at each other. There's something happening here. Couple of things though, because the the lens choice is probably a 50 or something like that. Her arm looks a little big compared to her face. I would, if I did shoot it like this, I would liquefy a little bit more. Personally, I don't shoot a scene like this with anything less than an 85 mil, especially I know that if they're going to wear a dress like this that shows off the arm. His body language is very, very beautiful. It's spot on. He just looks so into her. And I love how he's just almost touching her with his nose. Hers is a little bit too stale. So in these cases, I would really get her to move her fingers down his neck or just give her some direction. I would tell her some imaginative prose. I would tell her, hey, you know, I want it to feel like you're just going to melt right into him, into his chest, and do that in slow motion on the count of 3. Go 1, 2, 3. Right? And then just get her to do that once or twice or 3 times and shoot it again and again until you get the right frame. Great shot otherwise, just a few tweaks there. Let me just see here. I did liquefy her arm a little bit there. Only because the camera is seeing the arm first and therefore it does look bigger than it usually would have been. So this comes across as a snapshot to me because a lot of the photographic opportunities are missed in this photo. There's a lot going on and a lot to distract you from her beautiful little twirl. Again, going back to the other photo where I drew lines and shapes, I want to kind of do that exercise for this photo as well. So let's just draw the lines and shapes in so you can kind of see what's going on. Okay. Now, looking at this, where could the subject be? If I go up high, I could place her right in here like that. Right? So she would kind of be on this road, if you will. And she could be just right there. And all you have to do is bring your camera up high and shoot down so that they are within this frame. Now, if you don't want to do that, there are other parts of this photo that looks really beautiful as well. Like this part of the trees are what's bringing my attention in, and I really love how like thick and beautiful that looks. This side looks a little bit more like raggedy, so I'll probably even get her to stand up on here, get her closer to these trees, and then use the bokeh of the leaves in front and behind to create a cooler shot. And you know, so that would be a completely different photo, but if you really want to do this photo, I really think the subject should be here, not into this bit, and that can be seen because you see how heavy all of that is. It's distracting. So just watch your scene, you know, look for what's beautiful, look for what's distracting, and remove that before you even go about shooting. That way you'll have less things to contend with when you are photoshopping the photo. The other thing is, I think it's intentional, but I'm not a big fan of how flat the colors are. That's just me. You might like this, so that's just an opinion. All right, okay. I like how strong they look together. I think the pose really is well executed. Now, let's talk about, does that marry well with this background, right? We have a park setting and they look like they're superheroes, or they have that attitude going for them. And because of that reason, I feel like the background and the pose is not married as well, even though the pose is well executed. This is a nice photo. The couple are going to love this photo. A couple of nitpicky stuff. The light on her is a little too high. It's coming from a higher angle, and therefore the shadow is bleeding down. I don't know if you guys can see that, so let me just make this bigger. So you see how the shadow bleeds right to the edge of her mouth. When that happens, her features are lost in that. And I think you could bring the light down, or you could get her chin up a little higher. The other lighting part that's bothering me is how the sunlight is right here. It's almost the same ratio of light as over here. I think you could go down 2 stops with the ambient light So you could bring down the natural light and the sunlight down. Then you would have had less light in here and some color in these areas. That would have looked a bit better. I wouldn't shoot at this particular location with this pose. What I would have done is I would have looked for the cleanest place to shoot this photo. Looking around in this, I feel like right in here is the cleanest. My lens choice here wouldn't have been a wide angle either. I would have chosen something perhaps 70 or more. And even though it's a full length shot, I would have backed up a lot and shot them in there. And I would have gone down lower to avoid all of this. It's not really adding anything to this photo. So I would shoot this from a little bit lower angle, get my light a bit lower so that it's not creating that bit of a shadow, and I would shoot it somewhere in here where the light is even among the trees, and I would bring down that exposure on the trees a lot more, maybe 2 more stops under. So the trees look like that, if you will. The trees look like that, and you bring them out from there. So you get the point. All right, moving on. Okay, this is one of those poses where it actually does match the scene. The light on them is nice and even, and I do also like that little bit of rim light on her from this light on the side. The blown out lights are distracting. I wish they were about a stop or two underexposed. So you could even now, like, you just paint these guys in a little bit. Right? This railing right now is not really serving any purpose at all. If you had just placed their hands on it, then that means their hands wouldn't have been cut off and they would have been here. This really sharp shape is bothering me. I wish you brought her down closer to the railing and hid that with maybe her dress or something. Like, just bringing her dress down this way would have fixed that. I see a lot of back. If you just turned a little bit more to us, we could see the kiss a little more and see less of his back, and we would be more in with that moment. So just a couple of tweaks in the pose, and also making sure you keep the exposure correct for your background would fix a lot of the issues in this photo. Otherwise, good effort. All right, great use of backlight in this smoky, hazy environment, and this is one of those places where the framing actually works. I feel like the photographer thought about where to place the couple and placed them right in this. Only concern is I feel like the photographer was moving a little too fast, that their thought process was getting this photo that they missed a few things, like removing this glass out of the way and this gift box, and the fact that there's these letters, right? Like, it says OV, and I'm like, is it OVO concert? I know it's LOVE, but like the fact that you didn't include all the letters but only included like O and a little bit of the E is kind of sloppy. And also this couch, right? It's a big element, and if you're gonna get such a beautiful shot like this and you're gonna go to the trouble of placing that backlight there and getting all of this done, I would actually spend the next 3 minutes just moving these letters and this sofa and all of this out of the way. And so you'll have a beautiful square crop image that would look so nice. It's just, you decided to include these other elements that is really hard to remove in post, that really take away from the magic of what you've created. And man, even if you just get rid of everything and then just use the light to just keep this, and just use the light and do exactly the same thing, this photo would be kick-ass. But hey, it's not a bad photo, don't get me wrong. It's that good to great thing, right? Like, you're so close. Like, I'm more pissed that you've gotten this close and not finished off the photo. You know, you got lazy, and that's what bothers me. It's not that your lack of skill, it's you just decided, hey, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it and move on. So next time, don't do that. If you have the time, please perfect the image. Okay, this one I feel like you're just moving fast one more time again and not noticing a lot of the things that are distracting in this photo. The first thing I noticed is this guy and his white socks. Like, dude, come on, like wear shoes, right? Like everybody else is wearing shoes, he's not wearing shoes. Okay, cool. If he's not gonna wear shoes, I wouldn't shoot any of their shoes. Like I just would be like, fuck it, like this guy ruined it for me. So takes away from the mood you're trying to create, right? Like bunch of badass boys chilling, and he's like the godfather. He's dressed to the nines, man, and I love that. I wish his boys did too, but they're not. And then there's this one guy smiling and ruining the whole look of the rest of the photos, right? I'll work until I get all of it correct. If I want a particular mood from a photo to be told, avoid all of the distractions as well as things that take you away from that mood. So in this photo, it's this guy smiling and this guy without shoes that bothers me more than you including all of the rest of the stuff that's around here and the lines not being straight and all of that. So let's talk about technical elements now. So obviously you're not squared up, so I will square up so that lines like this is simple mistakes, right? Like where you're just not squared up to a scene. I'll ask you next time, like, please square yourself up to the scene and don't include things that don't really matter, right? Like this ground is not helping, so shooting down doesn't make any sense. So shoot a little high up. Watch the pose, like watch how it affects the dresses, right? Like he looks too frumpy and just sitting over here. This is the difference, guys, between having clients look at your photos and go, oh, this is a nice photo, everything looks right? Like it's your responsibility to make sure that happens. Take an extra 2 minutes to fix these things, and these are things that you really can't fix in post, but it just requires you to slow down and just study the scene, right? Like if this was your friend's wedding, how would you create this photo? If this guy is your brother, right? Like, and if this guy is your brother that you actually love, what would you do in this situation? Would you create this photo, or would you look at it and go, oh, you know what, brother's friend's not wearing shoes, this guy's shoes don't match, so let's make something else happen, right? Like that's what I would do. I think just going into a wedding with that perspective will help you, and also slowing down enough to see these things will also help you. So yeah, that's a few things to take away from this photo.